My roommate Sophia had her eye on my fiancé. The moment she managed to get his contact information from me, she started sending him pictures of herself in lingerie every day. My fiancé assured me of his loyalty, saying, "Darling, don't worry. You're the only one in my heart." Moreover, he sternly told her, "So what if you have a lot of money? I already have a fiancé. Leave me alone." However, sometime later, I personally witnessed the two of them entering a hotel together. Sophia even invited me and our roommates to dinner, where she proudly announced they were now a couple. With a completely calm demeanor, she said, "Love is simple. If you're not loved, then you're the third wheel. You should accept that and stay away from my man." I smiled and agreed with her. Sophia had no idea that I carried the experience of reincarnation. Their first meeting was orchestrated by me. "Sophia, what Lucas and I have is real love. In love, it doesn't matter who came first. What matters is mutual affection. You'll wish us happiness, won't you?" she said, tightly holding Lucas's hand, deliberately showing off their matching rings. Lucas's face showed no trace of regret. He calmly took a sip of wine, looked at Sophia with tenderness, and said, "Emily, our relationship was a mistake. The only one I love is Sophia. I've already proposed to her. Please stop bothering us. Let's part ways peacefully." Listening to their pathetic performance, I couldn't help but laugh loudly. The same fiancé who assured me of his loyalty a few days ago had already run off to a hotel with Sophia that very evening. Now they had come to me to formally stake their claim. What a soap opera, Emily, you. Perhaps because of the slight sarcasm in my tone, Sophia momentarily lost her confident expression. I shifted my gaze from their clasped hands to Lucas's cufflinks, which he had rolled up with care. "Patek Philippe. Nice choice." Lucas straightened up smugly and smirked. "A gift from Sophia. You always had an eye for such things. Back when we were together, the most expensive thing you gave me was probably that cheap belt from a street stall, right?" Sophia, as if playing along, leaned into his embrace and exclaimed, "Is that the belt you threw out?" Realizing how her words sounded, she quickly covered her mouth and added, "Oh, sorry, Emily. That belt just didn't suit Lucas. I wanted to give him only the best, not knowing it was something special to you." Since Sophia had added fuel to the fire herself, I decided to respond. "You're quite the actress, Sophia," I said seriously and extended my hand to Lucas. "Give me back that belt. Giving gifts to animals only degrades their value." Lucas's face twisted with contempt. "Emily, you're still holding on to my things to remember me by? How pathetic." Instead of waiting for the belt, my hand swung and slapped him across the face. A loud smack echoed, and a red mark appeared on Lucas's cheek. "Ah! How dare you raise your hand against Lucas?" Sophia's voice sounded as if she had witnessed a tragedy. I turned and slapped her on the other cheek. "Two for the price of one. There's enough for everyone," I declared, and finally, the room fell silent. I washed my hands with what remained of the tea and looked at the distorted faces of the pair, who now resembled puffed-up fish. My hands started itching again. "You're acting so uncivilized, even for a woman," Lucas said with disgust, stepping back and glaring at me with malice. "Sophia is the daughter of Mr. Thomas, the most influential man in Hong Kong, and her mother is the renowned designer Mrs. Su. Aren't you afraid for your life?" he continued. Without hesitation, I splashed the tea in their faces. "You think you can just take whatever you want? Small stature but big egos. Even a mosquito wouldn't bother you." Sophia glanced at me briefly, a hint of guilt flickering across her face. I turned and left the room without looking back. When the door closed, a system notification rang in my head. "Congratulations, you've earned betrayal points. Progress 20%. I knew the story was repeating itself. In my previous life, my fiancé had also fallen for a roommate. The difference was, they confessed in front of everyone at our engagement party, making me out to be the villain.
Even more disgusting was that they played all kinds of ugly photos on the big screen, which were made by AI face swapping, showing me flirting with different men in bed. It ruined my reputation, and my parents and younger brother, who had rushed back to attend my engagement banquet, died on the spot in a car accident after learning about this. In great grief, I could only prepare for my parents' funerals first. But it was also at this time that my mother was accused of plagiarism. All of her works were labeled as plagiarized, and my father also became an accomplice in the rumors. And the company was occupied by my second uncle overnight. I didn't have time to be sad. I just wanted to preserve the innocence of my deceased parents. But it was on the way to the court to submit the sordid materials to prove our innocence that a truck out of control crashed into me. I died. After death, my soul seemed to be imprisoned by something. I could only be trapped at home. It was also at this time that I learned that Emma, my younger brother's piano teacher, was actually the prime culprit who accused my mother of plagiarism. And Sophia was the illegitimate daughter of Emma and my second uncle. The 2 car accidents were all their doing. Their whole family had gone to great lengths just to seize my family's property. Looking at these demons with human faces and beastly hearts enjoying themselves on the bones of my family, I wished I could bite them to death one by one. Just when my hatred was reaching the sky, something claiming to be a system came to me. Detected that the soul body has a backstab value as high as 90%, meeting the signing standard. Do you choose to cooperate? Yes, time reversal. No, soul dissipation. You have 3 seconds to consider. I stared fixedly at that laughing and cheerful family below and agreed without hesitation. Time went back to when Sophia first asked me for Lucas's WeChat. Looking at her eager appearance, the smile on my face grew wider bit by bit. Sure. Well then, let's bet. This time, if you can't play me to death, then I'll rise up and play you to death instead. When I got back to the dormitory, the other 2 roommates came up gossipingly to ask questions. They were both locals from the capital city, and their boyfriends were arranged by their families for marriage alliances, and they were childhood sweethearts. At first, Sophia also had her eyes on their boyfriends. She deliberately took off her clothes or applied body lotion while they were on video calls. She even made some indescribable noises. After a few rounds of such incidents, these 2 girls saw through Sophia and directly cut off relations with her. As for Lucas, the son of a school board member, he was a famous rich second generation in the school. I just went up to give a speech as a freshman representative, and the next day he came bustling to the downstairs of the dormitory to block my way and confess his love. For half a semester, he accompanied me to classes, helped me reserve seats, and showed great care by sending me things. Only then did I agree. I thought a sweet relationship had come, but who would have thought it was like dog shit coated with arsenic? Thinking of the past, I shook my head and smiled. They've made their relationship public. My roommate had an expression that said, as expected, I really want to put up a memorial arch at the entrance. Bitches and dogs are not allowed in. I shrugged my shoulders. After quickly washing up, I climbed into bed with my laptop. At this time, my mother had already been preparing to go abroad to participate in a competition, and Emma had moved into our home under the pretext of tutoring. I fiddled with the laptop for a while and watched the images that appeared on it, silently counting the time. The next day, the news that Lucas and Sophia were in a relationship was flying all over the place. When I went to the public class, as luck would have it, the 2 of them were passionately kissing in the seats in front of me. They really were exhibitionists. I originally wanted to ignore them and walk around, but someone just had to rush forward to get scolded. Emily, don't be sad. Lucas and I just couldn't help ourselves. Sophia shyly leaned against Lucas's arms, panting softly. There were also quite a number of students around watching the show. I took a step back, feeling genuine disgust in my heart. Are you 2 dogs in heat, playing around anywhere? Are you not used to being in the rightful position after being a mistress for so long? Why do you still act like a mistress in the way you talk and do things? Do I need to make a PPT with the lingerie photos you sent to my ex-boyfriend's phone during your affair and invite all the teachers and students in the school to enjoy them, both refined and vulgar? I then looked at Lucas, who didn't know what he was being so cocky about. If you can't control your lower body, go and have a castration operation. Having your balls cut off is good for both your body and mind. The 2 of them turned livid. Suddenly, the class bell rang. I gave the 2 of them a friendly smile and found a seat by the window to sit down. A message popped up on my mobile phone, and I subconsciously looked at it. Sophia's father has donated another building to the school. If you still want to get your diploma, keep your mouth shut. The sender was Lucas. Those 3 exclamation marks at the end were really something. I calmly took a screenshot and then blocked the person and started drawing a mind map without distractions. Lure them with benefits, take advantage of chaos, attack when they are unprepared, and catch them by surprise. The game has begun. The first person I was going to target was my hypocritical and evil second uncle. Daddy, did you donate another building to our school recently? I deliberately chose a time when my father was in a meeting to make the call. The next second, a familiar and kind male voice rang out. Dear daughter, so you already know about it. Daddy, I specifically told the school board members that I donated it because my precious daughter is studying there. Did they praise our daughter? I should have told them to give us a silk banner. It would look so eye-catching hanging in the dormitory. Listening to my father talking to himself, I couldn't help but feel a twinge in my eyes. If my father and mother hadn't been so worried about me, how could they have been plotted against on their way back? This time, I will definitely protect my family, and I will make those behind this pay the price. I calmed down my emotions and deliberately complained angrily, don't even mention it. Have you secretly recognized another daughter behind my back? She's now boasting everywhere that it was her daddy who donated the building. When my father heard this, he slapped the table and immediately got angry. That person has a bad heart. Daddy will come and see for himself. Daddy will buy a flight ticket for 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. It'll take 2 hours to get there. First, accompany me to have dinner. I'll ask my roommates to go with us. I deliberately mentioned the time and blatantly smeared my second uncle in front of my father. Second uncle is coming too. I'm smart, you know. Second uncle has always been in charge of these things. He has to apologize to me. Donations belong to charity work, and second uncle was in charge of this area. It was only after I died that I realized how much profit he had pocketed from it and how much good reputation he had built for himself with my father's money. That's why the people on the board were biased towards him. This time, I'm going to gradually dismantle the good image he had painstakingly built. A helpless yet doting voice came from the other end of the phone. All right. Second uncle will go too and personally apologize to our little princess. My smile gradually cooled down, and my tone was both eerie and cheerful. Okay, then I'll wait for second uncle. I hope you can land safely. Sophia came back quite early today. I glanced at the laptop on the table and slightly curled my lips. Since she was here, I directly told my roommates about my father's invitation to dinner tomorrow. When we first arrived, our roommates' parents had all given us small gifts and also invited us to dinner, so they agreed to this quickly. I then turned to look at Sophia, who was silent. Dare to go? It was rare for me to provoke her like this, and my roommates all came to cheer me on. She probably doesn't dare. People with a sense of shame wouldn't have the nerve to eat at your family's dinner after doing such things. Another roommate also joined the fray. No. People with a sense of shame wouldn't do such things. These 2 rounds of support were simply perfect. To be honest, I don't know what's going on in Sophia's head. She just fell for the bait so easily. She didn't inherit half of her parents' scheming and shrewdness at all. Well, she immediately stiffened her neck and agreed. She even boasted that she would bring Lucas along. I smiled knowingly, and for a rare moment, a bit of sincerity showed on my face. That's really great. Lies are only interesting when they are exposed face to face, aren't they? The next morning, Sophia left without a word. I didn't pay much attention. After talking on the phone with my father, I couldn't resist my roommate's enthusiastic invitations and went out shopping. The airport wasn't far from our school, and the passing planes had large shapes exposed in the sky. I watched the passing planes and felt a bit listless. At 5:20 in the afternoon, my roommates and I arrived at the reserved restaurant. Surprisingly, Sophia and Lucas had arrived even earlier than us. It was obvious that Sophia had dressed up carefully. She was leaning limply against Lucas, getting such an unpleasant shock as soon as we walked in. What if we feel so disgusted that we can't eat later? One of my roommates pulled me to sit on the other side of the private room and also affectedly fanned her nose, imitating Sophia's manner. Is this how you were brought up? Lucas spoke up to defend her, his eyes full of disgust. Sophia told me that you guys have some misunderstandings about her and have been a bit cold towards her. In my opinion, I'm afraid you've been instigated by someone and are engaging in campus bullying. The person who was being insinuated, yeah, right. It was me who instigated her to pick up the trash I didn't want and show it off as a treasure. I gave an affirmation with great sincerity. After all, my upbringing taught me that there's an attraction between trash, which means birds of a feather flock together. My roommate applauded and also retorted, my upbringing didn't teach me to seduce other people's boyfriends. Another roommate echoed. Sophia's eyes turned red and she clenched Lucas's hand as if to assert her ownership. Lucas and I are truly in love. This sentence was said by Sophia. The one who isn't loved is the mistress. This sentence was said by Sophia and one of my roommates together. And that roommate deliberately put on a high-pitched voice. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. You. Sophia was extremely angry and could only reply feebly, you guys just won't understand. I quickly waved my hand. Your values are really hard to compliment. My roommate also added casually, don't you like sending lingerie photos to other people's boyfriends? How about I sign you up to be a lingerie model? Lucas's face darkened as he warned, you'd better stop while you're ahead. This kind of thing relies on the excitement brought by immorality. Once it's brought to the surface, it's definitely embarrassing. However, since when has the victim been the one to be warned? I'll return this sentence to you word for word. I poured myself a glass of water and then put it on the table. The man is despicable and the woman is slutty. You two are a perfect match. We wish you'll be locked together forever. But, it's true that you cheated, and it's also true that she did those things. If you insist on coming to disgust me in front of me, I'll show you the evidence. When Sophia first hooked up with Lucas, she sent me every single chat record. She had kept those things intact. Facing my gaze, the two of them could only give up even though they were angry. The despicable couple was completely defeated. Sophia looked at me with a strange look in her eyes. At first, I was just looking down at my phone to refresh the headlines and didn't notice. It was one of my roommates who nudged my shoulder to give me a hint that I realized it. When I looked up, Sophia guiltily buried her head in Lucas's arms again. I really couldn't help but roll my eyes. She probably was plotting something against me in secret again. I perked up a bit and recalled the events that happened at this time node. Immediately, I frowned. Just then, my cell phone rang suddenly. It was my counselor. I looked towards Sophia. I saw the smugness in her eyes exposed and she was still trying hard to put on a worried look. It's the counselor looking for you. There must be something wrong. Emily, you should answer the phone first. The other two roommates could also sense that something was wrong with her tone. Seeing that I didn't answer the phone all the time, Sophia's tone became only anxious. Emily, why are you looking at me? Answer the phone quickly. I shrugged my shoulders, swiped to answer the call in front of these people, and then turned on the speakerphone. Student Emily, you are suspected of cheating in the Zhishin Cup competition last time. Please come to the dean's office immediately. The counselor's serious voice clearly reached everyone's ears. In my previous life, when I was in a relationship with Lucas, I still didn't forget to participate in various competitions. The Zhishin Cup was one of the most valuable ones. When I won the championship and wanted to share the joy with Lucas, he said, "Congratulations," in a jealous tone beside me. At that time, I just thought that I had neglected him because of preparing for the competition and was still thinking about giving him gifts and spending time with him to make it up to him. Who would have thought that he had already hooked up with Sophia at that time? He also mocked me a lot when his friends praised me for my ability. Even more hateful was that Sophia spread rumors behind my back that I had cheated, and Lucas also added fuel to the fire, which made me the target of public criticism. For a while, all kinds of labels of academic fraud and cheating fell on me. Cyberbullying on campus followed one after another. It was the first time I encountered such a thing, and I was almost at a loss. But just when I was trying my best to prove my innocence, Lucas turned into a caring boyfriend again, comforting me that the innocent would be cleared and stopping me from defending myself. After all, it was my own stupidity that allowed this dirty water to be poured on me all the time. I sighed. The counselor's words brought me back to reality. Bring the relevant materials and come back quickly. Today, the school board members and several important figures are at school. This is related to the future development and construction of the school. You can't afford to be responsible if something goes wrong. Before I could say anything, Lucas sneered first. No wonder. That competition was in the field of computer science. You're a finance major but won the first place. It's really laughable. Sophia also quickly spoke up. Counselor, although Emily rarely gets involved in this field after class, she did win the award. Is there some misunderstanding in this? Lucas's tone became even more disdainful. You're still speaking for her. She has no ability but wants to win the award by improper means to polish herself up. Baby, you should stay away from this kind of person in the future. Sophia, Lucas, how can you say that? What if Emily is really a genius? Damn it, these two trash were acting out a play. I knocked on the table, covered the microphone. I'm your mom. I raised the water glass beside me. Seeing that the two of them finally shut up, I slowly opened my mouth. Excuse me, teacher. Where did this cheating notice come from? The counselor was at a loss for words. A classmate reported it and also presented evidence on the campus forum. This incident has caused a huge stir and has a very bad impact on the school. I glanced at Sophia opposite me and calmly drank some water. The examination rooms are all equipped with surveillance cameras, and there are also invigilators. The teacher can go to the relevant examination rooms to retrieve the surveillance videos and find the invigilators to ask. The Zhishin Cup is a national-level competition, and every procedure is open and transparent. Since the doubts didn't come from the organizer, it has nothing to do with me. I represent the school. If someone smears my reputation, they are smearing the school's reputation. I believe the school and the counselor will protect my innocence. As long as I don't fall into the trap of proving myself, those problems are not for me to consider. Without hesitation, I hung up the phone and looked at Sophia, who was stunned, with great interest. Do you think fabricating rumors, causing trouble, and seriously damaging the right to reputation count as illegal acts? Sophia avoided my gaze guiltily and stammered, I don't know the law. Indeed. I clicked into the campus forum with great interest and read the so-called evidence with relish. It's easier to deal with those who don't know the law. I took a screenshot with one click and sent it to my uncle, who is a lawyer. I also packed all the other things in my hand and sent them to his email. After getting a definite reply from him, I put down my phone with satisfaction. The progress of the backstab value increased a bit. Congratulations, player, for obtaining the backstab value. The current progress is 50%. Suddenly, the system voice rang out, and I was stunned for a moment. My heart involuntarily skipped a beat. At this time, my roommate, who had been watching videos all along, spoke to us in a low voice with a pale face. I just saw on the video that Flight XXXX had an accident. All 124 passengers and 9 crew members died. My roommate's voice grew lower and lower. She looked at me, and her lips were trembling a bit. Emily. That flight was the one your uncle was on, right? Sophia interrupted my roommate's words. Her sharp voice sounded very harsh. Could something have happened to your uncle? I looked up at her. Sophia was holding her mobile phone in surprise, seemingly trying to squeeze out a bit of worry on her shocked face. But all that showed was schadenfreude. The bit of gloom lingering in my heart suddenly dissipated. Some people are just like this, bad from the inside out. So whatever she does is her own choice, and it's not my fault. Emily, don't look at me like that. You know I've always been outspoken. I'm just worried. Sophia awkwardly took a sip from her water glass. She used the action of swallowing to cover the curve at the corner of her mouth that was hard to suppress. Lucas came back to his senses from the shock and put his arm around Sophia, waving his hand indifferently. It's not certain yet. Even if it is, it just means that Emily's father had bad luck. My roommate frowned. Obviously, she couldn't bear to hear such words. Faster than my roommate, my slap landed. Exclamation point. Caught off guard, Lucas was slapped and his head turned to one side. Sophia subconsciously wanted to fight back, but my two roommates quickly rushed up and pinned her down. What are you crazy about? Lucas gritted his teeth. Half of his face was hurting from the slap. Your father died and you're taking it out on me. If your father were here right now, just because of these 2 slaps, I don't care if he's your father or your ancestor, he would have died hundreds of times in my hands already. Suddenly, the door of the private room was pushed open. Say that again? A deep and mellow male voice rang out. Lucas looked over unhappily. The next second, he jumped up as if he had been electrocuted. Dad? Sophia also looked over curiously. Just one look made her so shocked that she almost dropped the cup in front of her. Lucas didn't notice his girlfriend's abnormality and walked over on his own. Why are you here? And these uncles and elders? 4 or 5 people were standing at the door. 3 school board members and the principal were gathered around my father. Compared like this, among those pot-bellied middle-aged men, my father was really like a lotus emerging from the water. Amused by my own thought, the inexplicable sense of grievance I felt when I first saw my father was instantly dispelled. I winked at my handsome old father. My father was still putting on airs, with a cold face and full of momentum. What did you just say? Say it again in front of us. Lucas's father winked at his son frantically. Lucas could only laugh it off. Out of the corner of his eye, seeing me watching this show, he directly pointed at me and ranted. "Uncle, it's her. Her father died in the plane crash and she took her resentment out on us. She also spoke rudely to my girlfriend. What's even more excessive is that she hit me. I've been taught since childhood that I can't hit women, but I can't let her bully me either. That's why I just taught her a lesson." Sophia obediently bowed to the people present, but her expression was very unnatural. It's true that Emily hit people first. However, I was also too worried about Emily's father, and my words might have touched Emily's emotions. It's my fault. My roommates looked at each other. Had Sophia changed her nature? Only I knew. She knew my father. And from the very beginning, she knew my identity. Or, in other words, everything she did around me was purposeful. The second person to be targeted had shown up. I sat steadily in my seat, already holding the knife that I had sharpened for a long time in my heart. Lucas's father couldn't figure out my father's attitude for a moment. Seeing that I had been sitting there all the time, he pointed at me and asked me to apologize. "What's your name? Is this how our school taught you? Come over and apologize to Mr. Thomas right away." My father's face became even uglier. My roommate couldn't bear to see this and was about to speak up to defend me, but I stopped her in time. Looking at Lucas and his father, who were looking down their noses at others, I slowly stood up, straightened my back, and reported my name, Emily. I keenly noticed that my father also straightened his back in an instant. When Lucas's father heard this name, his expression became even worse. "So you're Emily, the one who cheated? What kind of family raised a social scum like you? Don't you know that your situation is very serious now? The school can expel you directly. Hurry up and call your parents and ask them to come here." My father was so angry that his hair seemed to stand on end. He said coldly, "There's no need to call the parents." Lucas's father immediately agreed. Yes. We'll expel this student with a bad record right away." Lucas raised his eyebrows triumphantly. "Alexander, it's not all Emily's fault. Blame me if you want." I didn't pay attention to my tone. Suddenly, Sophia bowed to the people present. "Emily is still young and is a student. If she's expelled, it will definitely be bad for her future. Please consider Emily, uncles." She sounded so sincere when she said these words. I couldn't help but applaud. Mr. Alexander was already feeling awkward. When he saw that someone sensible offered him an opportunity to save face, he immediately took it. "Sophia, right? I remember you. You have good academic performance. You should keep working hard in the future." Sophia nodded obediently, with an attitude that seemed neither servile nor overbearing. My father, who had been ignored, coughed deliberately and pointed at me, who was watching the show. "Didn't you want to call the parents? I'm right here. Mr. Alexander, if you have something to say, you can talk to me." Mr. Alexander didn't react for a moment. "How could I trouble you with this?" My father ignored him, walked up to me, sat down, and forced a smile. "It should be Mr. Alexander who is troubled. I'm her father." All of them widened their eyes in shock. Mr. Alexander's smile froze on his face. "Mr. Thomas?" I guessed that both he and his son must have had a short circuit in their brains at that moment. "Daddy, someone just cursed you. But don't worry, I've already taught him a lesson." I looked meaningfully at Lucas and Sophia, then pulled my roommates and sat down first. "My dear daughter, Daddy will take care of such things. Did you hurt your little hand when you hit him?" I deliberately nodded with a wronged look. "His skin is too thick." Except for my two roommates, the others all had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. Mr. Alexander was the first to react. He raised his hand and gave Lucas a hard slap. "I've taught you everything in vain. Hurry up and apologize to Miss Emily." Lucas covered his face in disbelief and looked at me, murmuring, "Mr. Thomas? Is it Mr. Thomas from the Thomas Group in the Hong Kong Circle?" Mr. Alexander nodded with a look of hating that his son was so hopeless. Suddenly, Lucas grabbed Sophia, who had been silent all along, with such great force that Sophia's face changed. He lowered his voice and hissed as he questioned her, "Isn't Mr. Thomas your father? Sophia, didn't you say that Mr. Thomas was your father? Aren't you the eldest daughter of the Thomas Group?" Everyone in the room turned their eyes to Sophia. Sophia never expected that Lucas would say this in public. She struggled stiffly a couple of times, her eyes wandering. "Lucas, did you remember it wrong? I never said that Mr. Thomas was my father." Lucas frowned tightly, full of disbelief. You told me 2 days ago that Mr. Thomas donated another building and 5 million to the school because of you. At this time, Sophia didn't dare to say anything more and just kept denying it. When this matter was mentioned, my father turned his eyes to the two who were arguing. He had a vague impression of it. Sophia? I remember that among the students we sponsored, there was one named Sophia, right? Sophia was one of the sponsored students of the Thomas group. I only found out about this after I died in my previous life. When I was very young, my second uncle brought Sophia back. His original intention was to let Sophia, who was about the same age as me, replace me, who had gone missing, and become the daughter of the Emily family. However, my second uncle didn't expect that I could escape from the human traffickers and successfully call the police. That memory was very vague. At that time, I only remembered that when I got home, there was a girl of the same age who had been hiding behind my second uncle and peeking at me. I couldn't really remember what happened later, but it was my second uncle who planned my abduction by human traffickers. He did it to let his daughter take my place in my parents' hearts, so that he could effortlessly get everything from my father. When I heard him say this with my own ears as a spirit following him, I still felt a bone-chilling coldness. He had been plotting against our family so early. My eyes turned cold as I looked at Lucas, who was still asking questions non-stop, and Sophia, who was still denying it vehemently. I remember you also posted on Moments saying that your father donated a building, right? My roommates also remembered this and came forward one after another to testify. Sophia gritted her teeth but could only stiffen her neck and firmly deny it. But when my father mentioned the sponsorship again, her face instantly turned red. I heard that you also visited my home last holiday? Saying that you wanted to thank us in person? Pretending to be my daughter and enjoying the reputation that I've won for my daughter. Is this your way of thanking us? My father really looked imposing when he was serious. In just a few words, he completely nailed Sophia to the pillar of shame. Lucas finally understood. He suddenly shook off Sophia's hand, gnashing his teeth. You lied to me? When dogs bite each other, the good show begins. I also imitated Sophia's manner and kindly reminded them, the Hong Kong circle doesn't only have my Emily family. Maybe Sophia's father did donate a building to the school? My roommate directly gave me a thumbs up. Take the green tea's way and leave no way for the green tea. With my help like this, the expressions of the other school board members became even uglier. In fact, my father was the only one who donated the building. Under the pressure of the eyes of many people, Sophia could only bite her teeth and burst into tears. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I didn't expect that it would make Lucas misunderstand. I just called Mr. Thomas Dad when I heard that it was Mr. Thomas who donated the building. You've sponsored me for many years, and you've long been like my father in my heart. It was my wishful thinking. I'm really sorry. Sophia cried pitifully and deliberately downplayed the matter, only emphasizing that it was unintentional. No one could really get angry again. However, the surprise I prepared today wasn't over yet. Mr. Alexander, I remember you just said that you wanted to expel me? I looked over with a smile, and even the principal's face changed. There's a misunderstanding in this. Mr. Alexander didn't understand why the trouble came back to him again and quickly apologized. Whether there's a misunderstanding or not, it's better to make it clear. After all, I'm still a student. If something happens, it's better to have the parents deal with it. My father straightened his back and made a final decision. Half an hour for this meal should be enough for your school to figure this out, right? The principal nodded repeatedly. My father ignored the people at the door and asked my other two roommates to sit down and have dinner. His attitude was so kind. Beautiful girls, has our daughter caused you any trouble at school? Whether you're busy or not, you should go out to have fun and stroll around more often. Don't always stay cooped up in the dormitory, okay? My roommates answered in unison. Looking at the livid faces of the two people opposite me, I happily ate 2 bowls of rice. Half an hour later, the principal and the several school board members came back. But their faces were extremely ugly. Mr. Thomas, we found out who posted the message, but when we compared the IP, it was Miss Emily. Emily has always liked to show off. But no matter how much she wants to be famous, she shouldn't smear herself like this. Suddenly, Sophia said something, and then, as if she realized something, she quickly apologized. I didn't mean that. My cell phone rang twice. It was my uncle sending me a new message. It was time to end this farce. My roommates and I looked at each other. One of my roommates took out her mobile phone, called up the surveillance video of a certain day, and then placed it in front of the principal and the school board members. The picture was so clear that it could show exactly how Sophia used my computer to anonymously post those so-called evidences. This? I smiled slightly and remained seated. Some things were always missing in our dormitory recently, so we unanimously agreed to install a surveillance camera. Sophia couldn't keep her composure anymore, and she couldn't pretend anymore either. She shouted furiously out of helplessness, "How come I didn't know there was a surveillance camera? You're violating my right to privacy. I'm going to sue you." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The court summons for you should be on its way already. Spreading rumors and deliberately framing others. You're welcome to appeal at any time. The matter had already come to light. My father's face darkened, and he immediately put pressure on the school leaders. How do you plan to deal with this matter? The principal gave Sophia a fierce glare and showed no mercy. We'll issue a notice to clarify the situation, clear Miss Emily's name, and then expel Miss Sophia. Several people left. Mr. Alexander took a look at his son, who had been stunned the whole time, and angrily dragged him away. It was rare for Lucas to still be thinking about Sophia, and he seemed a bit hesitant. I'll stay here and wait for someone. Lucas, don't worry about me. Hearing the news of expulsion, Sophia wasn't really panicked. In her mind, she was going to inherit the company in the future, so academic qualifications didn't matter much to her. I knew who she was relying on, but I was determined to make her watch her hopes shatter with her own eyes. Dad, fortunately you came early. The flight at 4 o'clock this afternoon had an accident. I said as if I was still in fear, and then I was a bit puzzled. By the way, where's my second uncle? I deliberately chose to call my father during the meeting time because I was certain that my second uncle was also there. He coaxed my father to allocate more funds for charity to build up his own reputation, so naturally, he wouldn't let my father know the truth. But when I said it in front of him, catching him off guard, he would definitely ask Sophia to stop me. So Sophia chose to expose the plagiarism issue to ruin my reputation. But this time, the initiative was in my hands. It was doomed that their elaborate schemes would fall through. My father waved his hand. Your second uncle will come after me. You called me this morning and told me about this. You really scared your dad. I hurriedly bought the nearest flight ticket and came here. My father's voice suddenly stopped, and then he realized something belatedly. My dear daughter, what did you say about the flight? I handed him my mobile phone. At 5:30 in the afternoon, the flight bound for the capital city encountered strong air currents and was forced to make an emergency landing midway. During the 10 minutes when the crew was calming down the passengers on the flight, the plane caught fire spontaneously and exploded. It was all in ruins. There were no survivors. My father suddenly stood up, and disbelief burst out in his eyes. Is this the flight that your second uncle took? I stared blankly at the news that instantly dominated the headlines, remained silent for a moment, and then nodded. The time difference could give me an absolute advantage. It was undoubtedly extremely satisfying for me that my second uncle died without a burial place. But I couldn't reach out to help others. Sophia's expression became extremely terrifying. She rushed up to me. What did you say? Who died? My roommate frowned and pushed her away. Anyway, it's not you. That's Emily's family, not yours. Why didn't you seem so excited just now? My father was still frozen in shock and couldn't believe it. I could only comfort him a couple of sentences first, and then I looked at Sophia, whose eyes were bloodshot. It's my second uncle. Oh, right, you should also know him. After all, in terms of blood relationship, he's your biological father. So, the person you're waiting for won't be able to come. Sophia looked at me in horror. You? Are you surprised that I know about this? I looked at my father and tried to make my tone calm. When I was a child, when my second uncle brought her to our home to be my playmate, I even said that she looked like my second uncle. It was because of this sentence that I was abducted by human traffickers. My father frowned tightly and easily figured out the connection. It was just too much of a shock, and he couldn't speak for a moment. I looked at Sophia, and there was even a hint of sarcasm in my eyes. You father and daughter are really alike. One is slowly encroaching on my father's company, and the other is making waves in my name. And your mother? Emma, tell me, how many years in prison can she be sentenced for being convicted of plagiarism? Sophia's eyes gradually filled with horror. Emma had been in my home for 7 years and had always secretly used my mother's designs on foreign websites for her own marketing. But she didn't know that there was invisible surveillance in my mother's design studio. No one knew about it except my mother and my uncle. In my previous life, when I was in a hurry to clear my mother's name, it was my uncle who told me about this. But it was when I took out the evidence that I died in a car accident. In this life, I found out Emma's foreign website account in advance and handed all these things to my uncle. I also got the surveillance permission from my uncle and kept a close eye on Emma's every move in my home. Caught red-handed, my uncle and mother will take care of the rest. Too bad my second uncle isn't here. Otherwise, it would be such a wonderful thing for your whole family to go to prison together. I sighed and helped my father, who seemed to have his brain fried, to stand up. Let's go. Let's send my roommates back to school first. My father nodded blankly. My roommates had watched a good show, and their gossipy souls were burning brightly. But they knew it was a family matter and wouldn't ask too many questions. After sending my roommates off, the car was halfway on the road when I heard the system prompt sound again. Congratulations, player, for obtaining the backstab value. The current progress is 90%. I was a bit puzzled about why it had increased so much. But when the car passed by a bridge, I saw a familiar car submerged in the water. An ambulance passed by me. It was Lucas's favorite supercar. The road ahead was blocked. I lowered the car window and heard the people beside me talking. I heard that it was a couple. They had a quarrel or something, and then the car crashed directly into the bridge and flipped over. When they were carried out, they were covered in blood. I guess they were seriously injured. I rolled up the car window and looked straight ahead indifferently. How nice. Evil people get what they deserve.